Well, as of filming, neither of these teams are mathematically eliminated, but that'll likely change by the time this video comes out. Both of these teams have had late season surges, but the holes they dug themselves in earlier in the season are just a little bit too deep to escape now. As a result, fans are likely looking ahead to next season, and we are looking abroad for Cincinnati's representative, the Bengal Tiger. Now, as you may have guessed, the Bengal Tiger comes from India, specifically from Ritika Rai of the Novotel in Kolkata. The drink itself is a light and fruity drink consisting of white rum, brandy, pineapple juice, and pomegranate juice. The end result is a light and fruity drink, perfect for pairing with a crisp salad or some tandoori chicken. So why is this drink the Bengals representative? Well, simple, it's called the Bengal Tiger. Better question, why is the football team in Cincinnati called the Bengals? In my brief research, I found 2.5 main reasons. The half reason is that before the modern Bengals were in the city of Cincinnati, there was a previous football team that played there called the Bengals, but that kind of just brings us back around to our original question. Real reason number one was to pay homage to the Massillon Tigers, where owner Paul Brown first had success as a coach. Reason number two was to connect to a rare white Bengal tiger that was currently at the world-renowned Cincinnati Zoo. There's also a whole bunch of other reasons around, old movies and tigers just generally being quite cool, but that's going pretty firmly down the rabbit hole. Miami's representative is also tied to their mascot. It's the Blue Dolphin. Now, the Blue Dolphin is a drink with a couple of variants, but as far as I could tell, the original was created by bartender Gavin Inglis at the Dolphin Brasserie in London in 1986. The drink itself is essentially an 80s tiki riff on a vodka martini consisting of vodka, dry vermouth, blue curacao, and coconut rum. There's also the more modern Blue Dolphin Martini from Absolute Vodka, which keeps the vodka and blue curacao, but ditches the dry vermouth and coconut rum in favor of peach schnapps. I'm gonna be honest, neither of those drinks sound particularly appealing to me, but they do both certainly visually earn the title of Blue Dolphin. So this was a pretty straightforward mashup. Really, my main concern was just avoiding the nastiness that we got with the Talon Punch back in week 10. Only way to find out if I was successful in that, though, is to actually make this drink and try it. So that brings us to our final spec, which is 1.5 ounces of white rum. Sort of our base spirit for this drink, which I am starting to run a little bit low on. I'm gonna have to restock this soon as well. Gonna have to make a rum run, if you will. Half an ounce of brandy. This is a Saint Remy Signature, which is my favorite brandy out there. It's basically a cognac, just doesn't, meet the strict criteria to be a cognac, but it's everything you love about a cognac, like super easy to drink, very sort of like oaky and vanilla forward. Absolutely love this bottle, and it's only like 30 bucks, so like it's pretty good value as well for what you're getting. 2 ounces of pineapple juice. Had this open from the last drink, so we're just reusing it right here. Woo! Really counting on this pineapple juice to be our sweetness and be our acid in this drink. That's good stuff. 1/4 ounce of our blue curacao. So this was part of me trying to avoid that nastiness of the Talon Punch. We are only doing 1/4 ounce, so basically, although that was a heavy pour, that was closer to 1/2 ounce, so much for that, I guess, but trying to kind of downplay the role of the blue curacao in this drink, really just keep it to the sort of color. And finally, 1/2 ounce of our peach schnapps. Against my better judgment, I had two options basically. I could either go with the coconut rum from the original Blue Dolphin, or I could go with the peach schnapps from the Blue Dolphin Martini. I went with the peach schnapps. Could have gone either way on it. Honestly, the coconut rum probably would have made an overall better drink, but I hate this. I hate this peach schnapps, so I want to use it in as much as I can so that I can get rid of it, in a way that at least hopefully creates some interesting content. Anyways, we are going to shake that up. And it looks like toothpaste. I'm not feeling good about this one. We're gonna strain that into our coupe glass. There's that toothpaste color. The very large head from the pineapple juice as well. Whew. I was worried. I knew I was cutting it close with the wash line on this drink. Very glad that actually fit. But yeah, as befitting a drink of this color, I've decided to call this our Teal Tiger. Let's give it a try. That is such a crazy head on that thing. Let me try another one, because that was mostly head, but I think... Ooh, yeah, I think my worst fears are being realized in this one. Yeah, that's exactly what I was afraid of. So, I did not use my spreadsheet to balance the ratios between our sugar, our booze, and our acid in this drink. You know, I just kind of combined the two specs. And it is what I was afraid of. This drink is too sweet. It does not have enough acid, and so it comes off as quite sort of cloying and syrupy. Very much kind of like that Applebee's type drink that I was talking about earlier, where it's like, ooh, yes, this is, you know, mostly sugar. There's probably some booze in there as well, you know, but it's really not well balanced. It doesn't have a kind of like classy, you know, cocktail feel to it. All of that said, the actual flavor combo is kind of interesting, and I don't hate what the peach schnapps is doing in this drink. Like, the peach schnapps is certainly the main flavor in it, right? It's still, this drink still very much has that kind of like peach, you know, ring gummy flavor to it that is so characteristic of that peach schnapps. But it's weird. I think it's because the drink is actually so cloying, and that is the main flavor, it doesn't actually read as off to your brain, right? Like, your brain just kind of goes, oh, this is a dessert. I'm just drinking those peach gummies. Yeah, this is totally fine. And so it doesn't trigger those sort of like adverse reactions that your brain usually throws up when you're expecting, you know, a more refined drink and you get this sort of super syrupy thing instead. It works in a very kind of strange and unorthodox way. And I think, does the brandy actually help cut that a little bit? Let me see. I want to say it does. Like, really, like it is kind of absurd how much that peach is the only flavor in this drink. Like, it kind of, to an extent that's difficult to describe, right? It is a half an ounce of that peach schnapps in, you know, what's basically like 4.5, 5 ounces before we shake it with ice, which adds in extra dilution, extra water. So, like, you know, that peach schnapps is like maybe a tenth of this total drink. It is pretty much the only flavor in this drink, but everything else is kind of working around it without infringing on it as the main flavor. It's very interesting. Like, the pineapple juice really, like, you can see it visually with the head on this drink, but you can also get the mouthfeel of it, where it adds a body to this drink that's not that sort of syrupiness that you would get with just the blue curacao and the peach schnapps, right? It gives it a more sort of like rounded mouthfeel, I would say, that's a little bit more pleasant, right? And then the brandy, like, undercuts a little bit of the sweetness, like, not a lot, but it undercuts it just enough and introduces, like, just enough of those little secondary, you know, vanilla and oak notes to make it not feel too, like, overpowering. Like, it adds just enough of that, like, vanilla and oak to kind of make it feel more like a peach dessert and less of just a, like, you know, extract of peach. Because I think that's the main problem when you have these really sort of syrupy and cloying drinks, is that oftentimes it tastes so artificial that even if, you know, there's a lot of sugar in the drink, your body is just like, ooh, this is just so wrong. This just, like, this isn't something I should be putting into my body. And I think this brandy, you know, combined with the sort of mouthfeel that the pineapple is helping to create, adds just enough of a moderation to it that your body is able to sort of accept it as like, oh, this is just like, it's a super sweet drink, don't get me wrong, but it's a dessert drink. It's, you know, it's a lovely little gummy drink. It's not too artificial to the point where your body rejects it. Yeah, and we're not getting... There's still like a little bit of that sort of flavor clash that we got with the Talon Punch, but significantly less. Like, that's been tamped way down. That's like, you kind of have to go looking for it to pick it out at this point. Whereas with like the Talon Punch, like that was like the thing you tasted. So I think those extra notes kind of help moderate this drink a little bit and bring it back in. This is a weird one. I still don't really know how to feel about this one. I think it's kind of good. This is very much like, it's very much a drink that kind of, you know, breaks the rules. It would be interesting. Like, now I want to put the values into my spreadsheet and see what the actual ratios are. Like, see how off of what they should be this drink is. Like, obviously the acid is way low. I can tell you that right now. But like, is the sugar actually too high? Or is the sugar actually in a reasonable range? That I don't know. But this feels very much like a drink that kind of breaks all the rules of what makes a good drink, yet still somehow finds a way to kind of wrap around and be good. It's, you know, it's kind of that like, so bad it's good, but not in like the traditional way of like, oh my God, this is so bad as a drink that it's now good content. It's like, no, this is a drink that breaks the rules of what a drink should be, but in doing so kind of like reasserts what it wants to be. It's a strange little thing, and I legitimately cannot drive home how much I do not know how I feel about this drink. Well, a very confusing drink for what should hopefully be an interesting AFC matchup, but there's only one way to find out, and that's in the simulation. The Bengals get the ball first, and their offense definitely loves having Joe Burrow back. They march all the way down to the red zone before Burrow hits Mitchell Tinsley for the opening touchdown. The Bengals' defense also held strong, forcing a punt and letting the offense get right back to work. From the 10-yard line, it's just Chase Brown right up the middle, untouched for their second score of the game. However, Miami finally gets their offense in gear, and it's a mirror version of the last highlight. Devon Achane right up the middle for a 10-yard touchdown to put the Dolphins on the board. With just over a minute left in the half, Bengals are trying to put some more points on the board, and they get it done with a deep shot to a wide-open Jamar Chase, who easily outruns the pursuing corner for the 59-yard touchdown. However, Miami's offense remains explosive and flies down to the 11-yard line with just over 10 seconds left. Tua sails this pass well out of the back of the end zone, so it's field goal time. Patterson knocks the 27-yarder through the uprights, making it a 21-10 game at the half. Miami's offense came out firing in the third quarter, but on 2nd and 11 in the red zone, Tua steps up in the pocket and tosses the ball straight to a Bengals defender, who returns it back to the 19-yard line. The Bengals are far more protective of the ball in the red zone, as Burrow hits Gesicki on the in route for the 14-yard touchdown. Down 3 scores in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins are forced to go for it on 4th and 6, which they somehow turn into a touchdown thanks to an incredible toe drag catch by Julian Hill. Their comeback hopes were short-lived though, as the Bengals simply strode down to the 5-yard line and then tossed a little pop pass to Gesicki to extend their lead back to 18. But hey, the Dolphins can at least make the final score a little more respectable, as Achane strolls on in for the 2-yard touchdown. The Bengals aren't leaving anything to chance apparently, as instead of running the ball on 3rd and 10 and burning some clock, they toss up another deep shot, this time to T. Higgins for a 48-yard dagger. Now, I actually ended the recording a little bit before this game ended, but I managed to capture one final score. D. Eskridge taking this kickoff a whopping 95 yards to the house. Their celebration wouldn't last long though, as that was the final score of the game and Cincy wins 42-31. I certainly don't think anybody would be surprised if this game turns into a boat race, and I think the Bengals do have a slight edge in that department. A lot of that just comes down to me trusting Joe Burrow more than I trust Tua, but the numbers back it up as well. Despite missing Burrow for the majority of this season, the Bengals have still managed to average more points per game this year than the Dolphins. Speaking of the gap between Tua and Burrow, the simulation really shows the QB differential in this game. Burrow has had some really impressive games in his career, but this has a case to at least be in the top 3. Now, 366 passing yards is actually his least impressive stat in this game, falling just outside his top 10. However, he's never had a game with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions, and a 90% completion rate would be his highest by nearly 10 percentage points. Meanwhile, Tua actually had one of his better games of the season, with a comparatively mild 259 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Indeed, the offensive strategy for the Dolphins is going to be to basically build the entire plane out of Achane, who had 16 carries for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Neither team's run defense was particularly effective, as Chase Brown also had a healthy day with 61 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries. Unsurprisingly, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are both near the top of the receiving chart with 101 and 133 yards respectively, plus a touchdown each for good measure. It was far more surprising to see Malik Washington turn a modest 3 catches into 117 yards. Now, he has been averaging around 3 receptions per game this year, but he hasn't had a single 100-yard receiving game in his career. Hell, he hasn't even cracked 50 yards this season. Strangely, down at the bottom of the receiving stats, we have 2 players who turned their only catch into a touchdown. This would actually be Julian Hill's first touchdown of his entire NFL career, and while Tinsley has found the end zone twice already, this 19-yard reception would be his second longest catch of his career. Joe Burrow continues to outperform Tua in the Monte Carlo sim, but by a far thinner margin, 215 to 192 passing yards. Achane saw his numbers come down a little bit, while Burrow saw a small boost, but the team rushing yards overall increased due to their backup running backs each getting some touches that they didn't see in Madden. Most notably, not a single receiver in the Monte Carlo sim broke 100 receiving yards, which makes sense when you remember that these numbers are the averages across 10,000 simulated games. Speaking of, the score distribution of those 10,000 games is essentially bimodal, with only a 2-game difference between a 14-14 tie and a 21-14 Bengals victory. As a result, it's hardly surprising that the final average falls between those 2 peaks. It's a 20-16 Cincy victory. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the sweet, but barely balanced Teal Tiger. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.